Hi everyone, how's it going? I'm not gonna lie to you, right? This video, the idea for this video, it started one way and it ended a completely different way. I had watched a video regarding conservative white women in the US and them basically saying that them basically going around TikTok saying that somebody threatened to jump them, like, whilst Black American women have basically just been minding their business. Like, so there are all these white conservative women saying that, oh, somebody said they were going to jump us because we voted Trump. Oh, we're ready to defend ourselves. Meanwhile, I'm watching Black American women going, you know what? Not our problem. We're out of this. This has got nothing to do with us. And it really gave parallels to my own situation where I've been subject to racism by my neighbors. And the more that I mind my business is the more that they turn around and say, oh, I'm scared for my life. But it's not just racist people. It's like perps as a whole. The more you actually mind your business and don't pay attention to what they're doing, is the more belligerent they get, and the more they start saying, well, I'm in fear for my life, or they might attack me, and I'm just waiting for them to attack me, because what they're worried about is that you're going to deal them the same hurt, the same torture, the same aggravation that they put you through. They're worried that you're going to return the favor. That's why they go out of their way to instigate in this way by victimizing themselves based on something that isn't really reality. Okay. So I'm looking at this situation now, and it really reminded me of my own situation in dealing with bigotry. Because when you don't, after a while, you just stop giving them the response they want, and you just think to yourself, okay, I'm just going to mind my business. And that's when they get extra scared, extra angry, extra fearful, right? But then, because of the way my mind works and because I'm a targeted individual, I started thinking to myself, there's just something very unnatural about the way this whole race war is being instigated. It just doesn't feel right. It just doesn't feel natural. And I'm thinking to myself, there is a part of me that understands that a lot of the anger being stoked is not just due to a genetic predisposition towards favoring assigned roles in society. That's not just due to inherent genetics on our part. I feel like it's also due to advanced technology ensuring that we keep repeating these same cycles. Because over the decades, people of all races have become more educated when it comes to bigotry, when it comes to systemic oppression, when it comes to all of these things. People in general have become more educated. And the more educated that people become, and the more advanced technology becomes, and the more information that you're able to gain, is the more effort that needs to be put into the brainwashing, is the more effort that needs to be put into ensuring that the same cycles that have been observed throughout thousands of years continues. And the only way to ensure that is to meet the needs of the only way to do that is to make sure that as much information as we have access to, the people that are in charge, they have to make sure that they can manipulate our emotions to the point where we won't use cognitive reason even when we have it. The whole point and purpose of population control is to override the parts of yourself that would be cognitive, that would be objective minded, that would be rational, that would be intelligent, if it were not for collective feeling. So the best way to actually control the masses is to manipulate public feeling. But again, the more advanced society gets, the harder that becomes to do. And the harder that becomes to do, the more this brainwashing on a scientific level has to become more and more quantum. I don't know if that's the right word to use, but it has to be more quantum. It has to be more genetic. It has to be more embedded. It's not enough to just cause violence physically to people anymore. It's not enough just to do that. You have to energetically transform people now, because it's just not the same anymore. So I'm going along these lines and I'm thinking to myself, the real reason why these people are angry is not just the bigotry, it's also the mind control technology. And I was thinking of this situation, my situation with my neighbors. I was thinking of the situation in the US, lots of mirrors. I was thinking of how things are in the UK. And I'm thinking to myself, racism would exist without this technology anyway, because of the way things are set up. Racism would exist without this technology anyway. Anger would have happened without this technology anyway. But what if human beings were being given a little extra push in order to get going? And that's when I started looking a little bit further into a short video that had a Finnish physician by the name of Dr. Rauni Kilde. Full name is Rauni Leena Lukanen Kilde. I looked into a video containing her, and she was talking about one of the largest kind of HAARP-like transmission systems in the world. And she was talking about one facility that was outside of Tromso, Norway, which was part of the EISCAT system from Svalbard. I'll explain what EISCAT is in a minute. There was a headquarters in Kiruna in Sweden, and there was another facility in Finnish Lapland. It's Sodankylä. It's Sodankyla. Sodankylä, right? So there are 3 facilities within EISCAT. And what she said was electromagnetic fields were blasted from these 3 places. And because the amount of satellites there in Scandinavia, in northern Scandinavia, are so large and so many, the frequencies that are emitted from northern Scandinavia are so large that they actually affect the whole of Europe. And if they affect the whole of Europe, and it starts from the north first, I'm just saying how much of these electromagnetic frequencies are being used for mind control in the UK, in the Northern Territories, any Northern Territories that are not Northern Scandinavia. Like how, like, if these frequencies affect the whole of Europe, really think about it. How much are places like the UK affected by this? And it also begs the question, do the US have a facility like that? Because they already have HAARP, right? Do the US have a facility like this, similar to EISCAT, where there are frequencies, there are satellites so big and so many that they actually affect the whole of the US and maybe even the whole of the Americas, period? Do they have something like that up there? Because we have something like that. And it's actually affecting the way that we behave, according to Dr. Rauni Kilde, may she rest in peace. So it really made me think. If, and she said that mind control could be utilized through this technology. So it really made me think, what effect would that have on the UK? What effect would that have on people's anger? What effect would that have on people's negative emotions? And then I thought about her video. I thought about that video, and then I looked a little bit deeper into it. Now, this is where I start to tell you what EISCAT actually is. What EISCAT is the European Incoherent Scatter Scientific Association. This is their main headquarters is in Sweden, right? And what EISCAT actually does is they study the interaction between the sun and the earth. Namely, they study the interaction between the sun and the earth. So they study something called the ionosphere, which is the upper atmosphere of the Earth. And that is the part of the Earth where people would arguably get the most ionized radiation, because the sun is the source of ionized radiation. Correct me if I'm wrong, because I've looked it up and my memory isn't great. But from what I've seen, radiation therapy actually uses ionized radiation in order to get rid of tumors in the body, or malignant tumors in the body. They used ionized radiation. That's why a lot of people get sunburns when they go out in the sun. When they go out in the sun, they suffer the effects of ionized radiation. It's ionized radiation that causes the burns. Do you understand what I'm saying? And then there's another part of the Earth where EISCAT study. There's another part of it that is called the Magnetosphere. And what the Magnetosphere is actually just outside the ionosphere. It's outside our atmosphere. It's the part of space that surrounds Earth, or surrounds the planet that EISCAT is studying from. So imagine you've got Jupiter here, and then you've got the atmosphere around the outside, like the ionosphere. Hang on, let me put this down. Hold on. So imagine you've got Jupiter here, and then you've got the atmosphere around the outside. The magnetosphere, it studies outside the ionosphere. It's the part of the planet that has a magnetic field. So in studying the ionosphere, they're studying ionized radiation, and through the magnetosphere, they're studying electromagnetic frequencies. Now, what I believe EISCAT do is they study the disturbances. They study the interaction between the sun and the earth by studying disturbances in the ionosphere, the upper atmosphere, and the magnetosphere, which is beyond that. So they study the disturbances of these two places to ascertain how the sun and the earth are interacting with each other. Now, this is where it gets wicked for me, because what I actually think they're doing is, through these findings, I believe that they are recreating and amplifying these disturbances for mind control. Remember what I said about Dr. Rauni, right? I'm going to upload the video if I haven't already so that you can see for yourself. If Dr. Rauni has said that these technologies can be used for mind control, then it stands to reason that EISCAT would study the disturbances within the ionosphere and within the magnetosphere to recreate these electromagnetic frequencies and to recreate this ionized radiation to create disturbances in the human emotion and in the human body through technology. Because remember, these frequencies, according to Dr. Rauni Kilde, Finnish physicist, very, very good at her job, is talking about how these satellites spread frequencies throughout Europe. So it stands to reason that these frequencies are being recreated, synthesized, and amplified so that they can reach the entirety of the northern, well, this half of the northern hemisphere at least. Okay. And this is where it gets wicked as well. So on top of us being controlled through technology, thanks to this EISCAT facility, this is why I feel like astrological placements might seem more accurate than normal. And I believe that emotional responses to negative events like police brutality or like, wars and all that kind of thing, it's either our reaction is just a little bit too correct, or we're too, or on the other side of things, if you come from a conservative mindset, you're actually angrier than usual. I believe that any anger or any displeasure that is expressed within us is actually amplified through technology. I've experienced this with TikTok. Like that's why there are certain videos I don't watch on TikTok, because it gets me angry on a way that's unnatural. Online content is not supposed to get you so het up that you feel like hitting people, or that like your blood just it's not supposed to do that. It's not supposed to make you so angry that you feel like hitting people, or that you feel like hitting things, or that you feel, you know, it creates internal heat. Watching somebody on TV is not supposed to do that. Watching somebody do anything is not supposed to do that. And I also believe the negative emotions that can come from us using technology and that fucking facility in Europe synthesizing and amplifying negative electromagnetic frequencies. I also think that explains parasocial relationships too, or at least partially explains it. I think if it's going to amplify anger or amplify negative emotions, surely it would amplify the guilt, the shame, and the fear surrounding parasocial relationships, which amplifies obsession. So again, all of these things I believe are mind control. And I believe that, you know, people are being mind controlled. That is absolutely what I believe. And this is where it gets even more wicked. I believe that not only are disturbances recreated in poorer areas and hit hardest first in poorer areas because they don't have the nature surrounding them, or they don't have the means to defend themselves against this electromagnetic frequency pollution. They don't have the means to defend themselves against that. But I also think that rural and coastal areas are hit hardest. So we've got poorer areas and fringe communities that are hit first. And then you've got natural areas like rural areas and coastal areas that are hit hardest one way or another, because the nature that actually surrounds those places are quite powerful. They're powerful in providing grounding and stabilizing frequencies. So in order to make up the difference, they have to be hit hardest. It makes sense. The ocean, the sea, creates brings negative ions, and negative ions actually help stabilize the body, right? It helps stabilize the body's composition. It helps stabilize us. And then you've got trees, which also cool us down internally. Trees, nature, soil, they're all a good source of stabilizing frequencies. So the more trees that we're surrounded by, and the more nature that we're surrounded by, is the more likely that we are to be bombarded with this electromagnetic frequency. So I believe that poorer areas are hit hardest and rural and coastal areas are hit hardest. I also think that the fact that a lot of rural and coastal areas are quite right wing, especially over here in the UK, is not a coincidence at all. It's not a coincidence. Again, the highest concentration of targeted individuals in Europe, at least, or if not the world, is supposed to be in Poland, and Poland is incredibly right wing. So all that anger, all that unnatural anger that these electromagnetic frequencies create, of course, they're going to create more reinforced conservative mindsets. And then on top of that, anything that is against conservative ideals like critical race theory, like diversity, talking about rights for queer and trans people and rights for women, all of these things are deliberately conflated with not speaking out against government corruption. Racism is legitimized by having the truth about government corruption attached to it. So whenever you hear about anything related to diversity, it's always conflated with not believing in the corruption of government, not believing in gang stalking, not believing in mass mind control. Like, it's always conflated with that. Whereas conservative mindsets are always conflated with the exposure of, what I call it there. It's always conflated with the exposure of government corruption. It's conflated with the exposure of mind control. It's conflated with the awakening of people. So anything conservative and patriarchal is conflated with actually awakening people from the system. It's wrongly conflated with each other, and it's done like that for a reason. Combine that with the additional anger that is stoked within poorer communities and within rural and coastal areas, and you will start to understand exactly what you get a recipe for. You get a recipe for division. You get a recipe for people who cannot and will not come together against people that have been enforcing mass genocide through EMF and mass behavioral control. All of this results in a lack of unity. And I think where clairvoyance are concerned, divination is absolutely key to this whole thing. And I never thought I would say this. Remember, they've got mind control projects within the CIA related to clairvoyance and clairsentience. So I absolutely believe that anybody who can accurately read a room, accurately read a situation, accurately read when something isn't right in the atmosphere in terms of electromagnetic fields, anybody who can energetically sense when something isn't natural, they will also be hit first and hardest. This does involve the use of real empaths, real psychics, but they are used on both sides. They are used for both the mind control technology and remote viewing of other people through very, very powerful and amplified psychic senses. So you've got psychics on the one hand that are used for behavioral control, for mass control, and then you've got psychics on the other side who can sense what's going on, who know something isn't right, and who have all these systems put in place to isolate them and to stop them from exposing anything. When I really started putting this together, I started realizing how insane this was and how intricate this was. And unfortunately, that's another part of the abuse. That's another part of the human rights abuses that makes it so effective. It's the fact that it is so intricate. It's the fact that there is so much going on. Because human beings are used to abuse and bullying and harassment being simple, being vague, being, childish. And yes, it is all these things. But when the abuse becomes so intricate that the person talking about it looks crazy, it gives the abusers and the genocidal dictators deniability, because they have made it so intricate. Like, who's gonna fucking buy this or want to buy this? Like, even if they do believe you, why would they want to? There's just too much going on. There's too much to process. That's why abuse and mind control on this level is kept detailed, constant, and thorough, weaponizing every single fucking thing against the public. And when it comes to people of all races, I'm not going to hold you. These same people that are inciting race wars, they know us better than they know ourselves. They know how easily discouraged privileged people are. They know that instead of us being violent and fighting against people who are hurting us, we're just going to withdraw. They know what we're about to do. They know what we're about to do. And they've put electromagnetic frequencies in place to amplify those responses so that they can steer humanity in the direction in which they want humanity to go. I'm not explaining it very well, but yeah, the ionosphere and the magnetosphere, any disturbances within those fields are recreated and pushed back out to us, amplified and spread out throughout Europe. And I think this is the same with EISCAT, but I also think it's the same with HAARP when it comes to America and Canada and even South America. I believe there are facilities like that all over the world, these centers that have incredibly amplified and incredibly amplified electromagnetic disturbances and ionic disturbances that are spread throughout their respective continents. I believe that everywhere in the world has somewhere like that. It's just that because, the UK, Canada, because the Five Eyes are technically on the losing side, now everybody knows where their shit is. But I think everywhere in the world has a facility like that. And what's so worrying is that people are just not willing to believe it. And if they people are not willing to believe it, and by the time they do believe it, it's too fucking late. Even with Black Panther, Wakanda Forever. Look at Black Panther, Wakanda Forever. Look at the technology that they're using, the heroes are using. Flip and reverse that. It's being used against Black people. It's being used against the fringes. It's being used against the Asian community, like the queer community, even the traveler communities. It's being used against everyone on the fringes and everyone who's marginalized. And the one book series that I really want you to pay attention to is His Dark Materials. In fact, not just His Dark Materials by Philip Pullman, also the Bone Season series by Samantha Shannon. What you really want to pay attention to is not like the overall plot, not what's going on around the outside, but how these worlds are structured. And then take a mirror to that and think opposites for some of them. With the Bone Season, Samantha Shannon, you've got, clairvoyants who are part of a criminal underworld, criminal empires and stuff like that. You've got clairvoyants who are, because it's illegal to be clairvoyant, right? Flip reverse that. People who can see without being prompted, people who can see like electromagnetic disturbances and all that, they are being targeted and they are being, used for specific purposes. But really think about the way the world is going and you will see where the mirror is. It's the same with His Dark Materials. The subject of dust. Dust is ionic and electromagnetic. Dust is talking about the disturbances between the sun and the earth. And also this connection to different worlds, that CERN. CERN is in Europe. Okay, so what Philip Pullman has done, he has used historical events such as the mutilation of children. So he has used certain historical events such as the Catholic Church mutilating children so that they can't mature and they can't grow up. So he's basically used that historical event as an allegory for something else. Whether he meant to or whether he didn't, that's exactly what he did. So the dust coming in from this, from the dust that he talks about, that's the sun and earth disturbances. That's disturbances in the ionosphere and the magnetosphere that he's talking about. And again, mirror it, because what the magisterium are trying to do in His Dark Materials is they're trying to prevent the flow of dust from reaching people. I think that could be an allegory just as much for the illumination that comes from science as well as anything else. I think it's also an allegory for science. I think that the magisterium are clearly supposed to reflect the Catholic Church and its ability to, suppress information, which is not too different to what's going on now. But the dust is the disturbance of the ionosphere and the magnetosphere. That's dust, right? But again, mirror it. So the magisterium are trying to stop it from happening, stop these disturbances from happening. But in real life, the conservatives, the people who preach conservative rhetoric, especially those who are rich and who benefit from fucking defense systems using LRAD and using electromagnetic frequencies, the same conservatives who benefit from this technology, they are the ones that are appealing to us and saying, oh, we're on your side, when really, no, they're actually using dust. They're using the disturbances of these frequencies in order to engage in mind control over everyone else. I'm not going to say that the conservatives are the only ones doing it, but they are the ones who benefit from it the most. Because remember, military technology also uses this technology. So mirror it. Here's dark materials. You've got the Catholic Church trying to prevent the spread of science, prevent the spread of dust from coming into, from coming into our world, right? They're trying to prevent that, but in real life, people who benefit the most from this technology are trying to make sure that this technology is uninterrupted. And the only way they can do that is to keep supporters within conservatives and supporters, especially within progressives, ignorant to this technology. The only way that dust actually works and that dust actually influences people, and we're using dust as allegory here, the only way that science and all that type of stuff can actually influence people is if people don't know how it works. So you've got dust, an allegory for disturbances between the sun and the earth. Those disturbances are synthesized and amplified to control everyone else. But again, in order for people to be effectively controlled, they have to think that this technology does not exist. And if there are people who know that this technology exists, they have to be taken out of the way first. That's how this works, right? So when I really start to think about it, like, it's insane. It is actually insane. But all of this is real. All of it. It really makes sense when you start to think about it. Why the fuck wouldn't they synthesize and amplify disturbances? Why wouldn't they do that in order to effectively create mind control? And again, it's probably one of the reasons why astrology is it feels a bit more amplified. But again, this is where the genius comes in. Keep astrology separate from astronomy. Keep keep all these things separate from one another so that nobody's having a dialogue. And if nobody's having a dialogue, then nobody understands exactly how disturbances within celestial bodies are being used against human beings. It's crazy when you really start to understand how all of this works. And when it comes to clairvoyance and physicists, what is a psychic except somebody that can accurately detect what's going on in terms of somebody's electromagnetic field? What is a psychic apart from that? What is a psychic apart from somebody who can accurately detect the electromagnetic fields of not only people that are here, but people who have passed? But keep physicists, and especially quantum physicists, away from psychics. Keep quantum physics away from metaphysics. You keep disciplines away from each other, and that's how you get people ignorant of how everything actually works. So the whole discussion of politics has led me down this rabbit hole where I'm beginning to understand exactly how this process works. And bear in mind, I'm only talking about a fraction of what's going on here. I'm not talking about the fact that our technology uses two of the deadliest frequencies known to man. I'm not talking about the effect that can have on pregnant women and their fetuses, the same fetuses that conservative people are trying to have more of, especially white fetuses. I haven't even talked about that yet. I haven't talked about the effects that that these frequencies have on nature and the ecosystem. I haven't even talked about all of that yet. Everything that I'm talking about is just a tip of the iceberg. Crazy. Absolutely crazy. You wouldn't believe the amount of shit that people are already able to do to people's bodies, minds, and souls. Well, not souls, not yet, but Well, yeah, souls. That's what the aura is, isn't it? It's a soul. But like, you wouldn't believe the amount of things that people are able to do to one another. You would not fucking believe it. And everything that I've spoken about just now is the tip of the iceberg. Crazy. You would be terrified. Even if you knew everything that, even if you thought you knew everything that there was to know, you'd be fucking terrified. Because going to this level to keep people under control, you have to really hate humanity to go to these levels. You have to really hate humanity to go to these levels. This is not love. This is something else. This is something else. Man, I'm just oi. This is nuts, bro. Like, you see why I needed to have the meditation music in the background? Because this is some wild shit. I haven't even explained it properly. I think given enough time, I will talk a little bit more about the psychic element, but I think I'm going to save that for Empress Justice Tarot. No, Empress Justice Astrology, I'm going to save that for. But fucking hell, man. Like, yo, I'm just, I'm at a loss. I'm absolutely at a loss. This is absolutely insane. And the part that makes it the most insane is that it's all true. All of it. The whole burning of the skin that people started saying was DNA activation. Oh yeah, your DNA is being activated, all right. It's just not towards your evolution. That's why your skin is burning. It's because of these big ass fucking facilities amplifying, like recreating and amplifying disturbances in the cosmos, and in particular between the sun and the earth. That's why all of this shit is happening. It's got nothing to do with your evolution, nothing to do with your growth. I'm so sorry. And as for all these sightings of northern lights, have you noticed that there's all these sightings of northern lights? That's not fucking natural, bro. Somebody told me that wasn't natural. And at first I was like, why'd you have to ruin people's good time? But then I started investigating it and I'm like, no, why are there all these sightings of northern lights if the atmosphere wasn't being fucked with? Like, why would all of this be happening? But I don't have enough education to talk about like the disruption of the northern lights and geomagnetic storms or whatever. Like, for all I know, the geomagnetic storms could be recreated as well. It could be being recreated too. But I don't have enough evidence or research to really go into that right now. All I can say is that, like, at first I didn't want to believe that the northern lights were just, the natural order being fucked with. But then I started looking into it and I'm like, yeah, this isn't right. This isn't right. And I think the places where the real northern lights are might hold the key towards what's really going on everywhere else. Not just the northern lights, the southern lights too, because we haven't talked about Antarctica. We don't know what's down there. There might be facilities down there that people don't know about, or facilities closer to there that people don't know about. So I don't know if I should go yet. Oh my God. Absolutely nuts. You see how this rabbit hole goes down? I started off talking about how racists couldn't take the heat that they created. It started off talking about that, and now we're talking about how the whole world is being influenced through their emotions. Because again, what it boils down to is the more that people are more cognitively aware and cognitively educated, is the more their emotions have to be leaned on. But you can't the more advanced people get is the less you can actually rely on traditional violence. Traditional violence might work on cultures that haven't moved on very much, but it doesn't work. You know, it doesn't work in countries like this. It doesn't work in countries like here. You have to be more subtle about it, and you have to be more energetic about it, more energy centered. And again, I haven't talked about everything, but like I'm going to leave links in the description, and I'm going to upload Dr. Rauni Kilde's video, because she explains it a lot better than me. She's a physicist. She was a physicist, so she explained that a lot better than I have here. But it just makes me think about all the fiction as well, and not just the Bone Season series and his Dark Materials. It also makes me think about the Harry Potter series as well. So much was made of, because remember, Slytherin is the house of water, is represented by Slytherin, and Slytherin, the snake. Okay, so let me get into Harry Potter real quick. As much as I don't fuck with that transphobe, let's get into Harry Potter real quick, right? Slytherin is represented by the snake. It's represented by the water element. But in Vedic astrology, it's also represented by Ketu, right? The south node of the moon. So in order to understand how you are being energetically manipulated, first of all, you have to detach yourself from what's going on up here. Because what's going on up here, again, you're likely to be cognitively aware of things, but you're not likely to be energetically aware of what's taking place in your body. So you have to kind of divorce your mind, or divorce yourself from your mind, which is exactly what Oclumency is in the Harry Potter series. You have to separate your body's responses from what's going on in your mind. And you have to be able to look at what's going on in your mind objectively. You have to be able to separate the two. And that's what Ketu does in astrology. And then with Rahu is symbolized by the lion, the North Node. That's Gryffindor. In Gryffindor, you got Hermione, who's all about reading books and being logical. And you know, you got Professor McGonagall, who's all about being fair. You've got Harry Potter, who just makes reasonable decisions pretty much all the fucking time. Like he is a little bit of a Gary Stew, to be honest. Like he does a lot of perfect things. Like he rarely gets a foot wrong. He can be impulsive, but he rarely gets a foot wrong. And then you've got Ron, who might be instinctive, but you know, he doesn't communicate the instinctual very well. So you've got Gryffindor, who doesn't just represent fire, they also represent Rahu. They represent the headspace, the logic, and they also represent a place where our emotions and what we see and what we perceive are fused together. They're fused together in the mind. Whatever we perceive in our mind, represented by Gryffindor, is what we feel. We feel what we perceive. It's a feeling that moves down into our bodies. And in order for us to defend ourselves against mind control, we have to follow Slytherin's lead. We have to understand our own ancestry. Key 2 is to do with ancestry. You have to understand our own ancestry, where it comes into this. We also have to divorce our bodily sensations from what's going on in our minds in order to ascertain whether or not the feelings that we have are actually natural, or they are being amplified by Voldemort, which is amplified by mind control. Again, I don't fuck with J.K. Rowling as a rule, and I don't know if she's aware of what she was actually teaching people, but this is what I saw from her fiction. I'm so glad I read that series. Jeez. And, you know, again, you've got Slytherin, Ketu. They're represented as the Nazis of the fucking book series, whereas Gryffindor are represented as the righteous ones and, you know, the right on ones. But in real life, it's actually the other way around. Ketuvians are likely to not really be that bigoted when you really think about it, because they're always looking to different environments. And they can be conservative in their way, but they often venture into different environments physically. Whereas Rahu tries to be open minded when really they're actually very fixed in their mindset, they're fixed in their ways. But that's for another conversation. I feel like that's for Empress Justice Astrology, honestly. But yeah, the Harry Potter series, it's all about defending yourself against mind control. Defense against the dark arts is defense against mind control. And I can't believe I didn't see this sooner. This is crazy. Crazy. Absolutely insane. And, you know, the irony is that a lot of people who become successful, they become susceptible to mind control as well. Like some of them, a good deal of them become mind control experimentees. I don't know whether they're aware of this or not. I don't think all of them are, but a lot of them become mind control experimentees as well. You know how, you know, there's fiction where you've got AI pop stars and AI, like, no, like a lot of celebrities are proto AI and we don't even realize it. But yeah, the Harry Potter series, like, the Bone season talks about how divination is used, and divination is marginalized because there are people who can tell that something is wrong before everybody else does. So the Bone season talks about that. His Dark Materials talks more about the scientific side and uses history in order to do it. And then you've got something like J.K. Rowling, somebody like J.K. Rowling who uses philosophy through the medium of this magical world to tell you how to defend yourself against the dark arts, which is really mind control. Wild as hell. Like, it's like wild as hell. Like, when you pay attention to how creativity is providing a mirror, it really, like, it really wakes you up to a lot of what's going on. Crazy. Yeah. And don't even get me on a song of fire and ice. You're talking about Daenerys Targaryen, named after the goddess of the moon, and her reemergence as the Khaleesi after Khal Drogo dies. You're telling me that's not imagery of a comet? That's not comet imagery. The Devil's Comet, the Mother of Dragons Comet, bro. Again, read your fiction. Read your fiction. This is what I've learned about the world. If you want to know what's going on in fiction, watch the news. And if you want to know what's going on in real life, read fantasy. We are being told what is going on. We're being told how we're being used and how we're being manipulated constantly. And yes, I'm going to put religion in the fantasy bracket. Read your religious books. That's fantasy too, and it's talking in allegory about how human beings are being influenced. Fuck me, man. Again, it's just crazy. It's crazy. I don't know if I should go yet. I feel like I still have some more to say, but I'm not very articulate in talking about these things. I mean, I can talk, but like there's a difference between talking and being articulate. I don't know, man. I'm sure I'll think of it, but everything is to do with the brain and nervous system, and everything is to do with electromagnetic fields and radiation, light, sound, and the nervous system and the brain. You talk about the control of somebody's soul and somebody's spirit. That's what it boils down to. So, on that note, I'm going to leave you guys. I'm going to leave links to as much of this information as possible so that you guys know I'm not tripping. But yeah. I guess I'll see you guys in the next one. If you've made it this far in the video, my fellow TIs, let me know how you guys are doing. This is going to be an interesting couple of decades, to say the least. Okay. Peace and blessings. I love you guys so much. Bye bye, my darlings.